The wind howled through the abyss as Elias stepped closer to the cliff's edge, his boots crunching against the damp stone. Every breath tasted of salt and electricity. What if gravity isn't constant? He'd once asked. And now, standing on this forgotten ridge, the question felt less like theory and more like prophecy. His instruments blinked to life sensors, meters, a laser rangefinder humming with faint blue light. Mara adjusted a tripod behind him, her voice steady but laced with doubt. The ocean below churned like a restless giant. Elias raised the gravimeter, calibrating. The digital readout flickered 9.8, 9.7, then 0. For a heartbeat, silence. Then, a wrench lifted from the ground, spinning lazily into the air. Mara froze. The tools began to float, one by one, orbiting them in eerie rhythm. The cliff groaned beneath their feet, as if awakening. Elias whispered, almost reverently, "What if gravity is trying to leave?" For a moment, Elias could not speak. The silence pressed against his chest, heavier than the missing gravity. Mara shouted over the wind, demanding an explanation, but her words drifted slow and hollow, as if the air itself had thickened. He checked the readings again. No magnetic spikes, no seismic tremors. Nothing that made sense. The cliff sensors recorded gravitational drift in negative values, the kind of numbers that should exist outside equations. He tried resetting the system. It refused. The wrench above him rotated once, twice, then steadied, pointing toward the open sea. The clouds shifted in perfect synchronization, like a signal waiting to be understood. Mara's voice cracked. "It's like it's breathing." Elias looked out to the horizon, realizing the air wasn't moving around them. It was moving through them. And in that instant, he knew the anomaly wasn't just physical. It was conscious. The ocean roared louder, as if reacting to their intrusion. Elias steadied his grip on the cliff rail, heart hammering against the impossible stillness of the air. The floating instruments began to drift outward in a slow spiral, following an invisible current. Mara's voice trembled as she called for him to shut everything down, but he didn't move. Instead, he raised his hand, watching how even the fine grains of sand refused to fall back to earth. "It's not malfunction," he muttered. "It's responding to something." Mara turned toward him sharply, fear tightening her features. "Responding to what?" she demanded. But Elias had no answer. The ground vibrated beneath their boots, faint but rhythmic. Not seismic, not random. It was as though the planet itself was pulsing. In that rhythm, Elias heard a pattern, slow, deliberate, alive. He stared into the mist, whispering, "It's measuring us." The anomaly's pulse grew stronger, shaking pebbles loose from cracks in the cliff. Elias dropped to one knee, pressing a sensor into the rock. Its screen displayed fluctuating energy bands far beyond the electromagnetic range. The readings looked like a heartbeat drawn in light. Mara crouched beside him, whispering that they needed to leave, that the equipment could explode if the charge continued. But Elias only stared at the glowing waveform. "It's consistent," he said softly. "It's repeating every 22 seconds. The realization hit him like thunder. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. The earth, or something beneath it, was communicating through gravity. A low hum rippled through the stone, almost melodic, and for the first time Mara heard it too. The cliff wasn't just alive. It was singing. Then it happened. A deep tremor, unlike any earthquake, rippled through the cliffside. The instruments shot higher into the air, spinning faster now, caught in a vortex of invisible force. Elias stumbled backward, shouting for Mara to grab the data cores. She reached for the console, but her fingers brushed against a field of static that burned with icy heat. Sparks of blue light arced between the tools, forming a rough sphere that hovered just meters away. Inside it, reality bent, droplets of rain. Froze in place. Light stretched and warped, and for a heartbeat, Elias saw himself standing within the distortion, delayed by seconds. He gasped, clutching the gravimeter to his chest. "It's creating a mirror field," he whispered. Mara's voice cracked through the wind. "Elias is copying us." The sphere flickered once, then dissolved, sending a silent shockwave outward. The floating tools dropped, clattering onto the rock, and gravity returned. But the cliff kept humming, steady and slow, like a memory, repeating itself. The silence after the collapse was unbearable. Every sound seemed to vanish into a vacuum. Elias stared at the scattered instruments, their metallic shells faintly vibrating, as if remembering their time adrift. Mara crouched by the console, scanning through corrupted data logs. The gravimeter's graph showed a brief plunge below zero. Negative gravity. What? Impossible. She breathed, voice trembling. Elias barely heard. He could feel the weight of the air shifting again, the strange heaviness returning. He dropped a pebble, watching it fall. Then slow, then hang motionless. A gust of wind passed, but the stone remained suspended, perfectly still. Elias took a step closer, whispering, "It's not gravity disappearing. It's reversing." The horizon flickered, bending like liquid glass, and for the first time Mara saw the sea tilt upward, climbing toward the cloud. The ocean was climbing, not a wave, but the entire surface rising like a living wall. Mara's pulse raced as she watched it stretch higher, defying everything she'd ever believed. Elias, frozen in fascination, held out his hand as the air around them grew lighter again. Their tools quivered, as if deciding whether to obey the laws of physics. "Record it," he said sharply. Every second, the data streamed in, lines of numbers folding over each other, unreadable chaos. Then, a tone emitted from the scanner. Low, harmonic, deliberate. Mara's gaze darted toward Elias. "That's patterned." The pitch changed in perfect intervals, mimicking breathing. Elias whispered, "It's communicating." The floating pebble drifted higher, tracing invisible shapes in the air. They stood in stunned silence, listening as the sound pulsed again. Not random, not noise, but language. Minutes passed, though neither could tell how many. Time felt stretched thin, like the air was slowing it down. Elias played back the harmonic tone, analyzing its pattern. Each pulse matched the Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural electromagnetic heartbeat, but reversed. Mara stared at him, realization dawning. It's mirroring the planet. The theory clawed at Elias' thoughts. If gravity here was oscillating, maybe the cliff was amplifying Earth's own pulse, an ancient natural oscillator. He imagined tectonic layers acting like vast resonant strings, vibrating between gravity and electromagnetism. The thought chilled him. If it's amplifying, he said softly, then the next wave could invert everything. As if answering, the cliff shuddered again, but upward this time, lifting dust in a slow-motion cascade. The world tilted, and gravity changed direction once more. The next few seconds unraveled everything. The air grew dense, pressing against their chests. The gravimeter's alarms screamed. Readings swung from negative to positive, and back in fractions of a second. Elias stumbled as the cliff under him bent inward, as if space itself were flexing. Mara screamed his name as her body lifted off the ground, rising several feet before crashing down again. He lunged to grab her hand, pulling her close. "We have to shut it down," she cried, but Elias hesitated. He could see something inside the distortion, faint silhouettes moving, copies of themselves lagging behind. They were seconds apart, like echoes of their own reality. Elias's breath came ragged. "It's splitting time." The instruments froze again. The horizon rippled once more. Then silence, as if the universe itself had stopped breathing. When the world finally steadied, the instruments were silent. The sky burned with strange light, not sunset, not dawn. Something in between. Mara sat trembling, clutching her tablet. Its data showed something new. The gravitational frequency had stabilized below zero. Elias stared at it, his expression torn between awe and terror. "It's like we're on the other side of gravity," he whispered. She looked at him, eyes wide. "Then what's holding us down?" Before he could answer, the radio crackled. A faint voice breaking through static. Dr. Kaito Sato's tone was strained, distorted. "Rowan, Kessler, do not continue the experiment. The field you've triggered." The transmission broke apart, replaced by a deep pulse that shook the air. Elias glanced toward the sea. The waves were still, perfectly flat, unmoving. Gravity hadn't just reversed, it was waiting. The radio hissed, and then, through the static, came Sato's voice. Fractured, trembling, but unmistakably urgent. "Rowan, it's happening again." Elias froze, staring at the flickering transmitter. Mara leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Again," she whispered. The signal stabilized for a moment, revealing Sato's weary face through a hollow feed, shimmering and fragmented. 1963. Same coordinates. Gravity collapsed for 13 seconds. Entire cliff section vanished. No debris, no seismic record. His voice cracked as interference distorted the image. "You have to leave." But Elias couldn't. The instruments had started humming again, glowing faintly blue. He felt it. A vibration that wasn't sound, resonating inside his chest. The sea below pulsed with synchronized ripples, expanding outward like heartbeats. "It's not an accident," Elias said softly. "It's a pattern." The hollow sputtered. Sato's last words slipped through the static. "Then you're standing inside a signal." As the signal strengthened, their surroundings changed. The mist thickened, illuminated from within by subtle flashes, like lightning trapped in fog. The hum deepened into something musical, rhythmic, deliberate. Elias placed the gravimeter on the ground. It began to vibrate, rising a few centimeters off the rock. Mora's breath caught as she recorded the frequencies. They weren't random pulses anymore. They formed harmonic intervals, repeating in precise mathematical sequences. "It's transmitting information," she murmured. Elias's gaze locked on the horizon, where the light pulses synchronized with the sea's heartbeat. Each flash painted the cliff in ghostly white, revealing shapes, ancient carvings half buried in the stone, now glowing faintly. He touched one, and the hum rose in pitch, almost joyous. "It's responding to touch," he whispered, voice shaking. The carvings continued to glow, forming a network of symbols across the rock face. Mara traced one with her gloved finger, realizing the patterns weren't random. They matched the waveform signatures from the earlier anomaly. "They're maps," she said. "Frequency maps." Elias stared at the readings, heart pounding. Each line represented gravitational vectors, but reversed, as if drawn by the planet's shadow. He realized with dawning horror that these symbols weren't made by humans. They were records, fossilized memories of gravitational events that had occurred long before civilization. "It's the Earth's diary," Elias murmured. A sudden jolt cut him off. The carvings flared brighter, their lines converging into one massive spiral of light. The hum rose to a piercing pitch. The air itself began to bend inward, like the cliff was breathing them in. The spiral pulsed, each flash pushing air and dust outward in concentric waves. Elias stumbled backward, shielding his face. Mara cried out as her instruments sparked wildly, their displays blurring with unreadable data streams. "It's transmitting faster than I can record," she shouted. The ground trembled again, but not from instability. It was rhythmic, deliberate. The spiral's light condensed into a single beam shooting straight upward into the clouds. Elias watched, transfixed, as the beam split into hundreds of thinner rays, each bending and looping back toward Earth. It resembled a neural network of light stretching across the horizon. "It's mapping something," he breathed. Mara's eyes filled with dread. Or it's scanning us. The hum became so intense, it drowned out the wind. Elias gripped the gravimeter, staring into the blinding light. "If it's alive," he whispered, "then it knows we're here." And then everything fell silent again. The light vanished as quickly as it came, leaving only the faint echo of the hum vibrating through the stone. Mara sank to her knees, exhausted. Elias stood motionless, staring at the horizon, his pupils still dilated from the flash. The gravimeter beeped softly. Steady now. Normal. Yet every few seconds, the readings spiked for a heartbeat before returning to baseline. The signal hadn't ended. It had moved inside the instruments. "It's in the system," Mara whispered. Her screen flickered, displaying symbols identical to those carved on the cliff. The characters rearranged themselves into a single word: repeat. Elias's mouth went dry. "It's looping," he said. The wind picked up, carrying a faint echo that sounded eerily like their own voices. "We triggered it," he murmured. "We became part of its cycle." The cliff shuddered once more, as if confirming his words, and somewhere deep below, the hum began again, fainter, slower, waiting. The hum beneath the stone deepened, until it became a vibration they could feel through their bones. Elias steadied himself against the equipment crate, watching the compass needle spin wildly in every direction. Mara knelt beside a sensor, struggling to keep the readings stable. The cliff emitted a faint crackling noise, like static electricity crawling through rock. Suddenly, the ground beneath them flickered, a pulse of bluish light rippling outward in every direction. Elias stared down as fractures split across the stone, glowing faintly, as if molten light flowed beneath the surface. "The magnetic field's collapsing," Mara shouted, shielding her eyes. Elias could barely hear her. The hum became a roar. Their instruments trembled, levitating again, caught in an unseen current. Then the impossible happened. The cliff itself began to distort, its edges bending inward like glass under pressure. The fractures glowed brighter, converging toward a single point near the cliff's edge. Elias cautiously approached, mesmerized. The air shimmered like heat above asphalt. "There's a field forming," he murmured. Mara checked the magnetometer. The readings spiked so high they looped back to zero. The hum changed tone, now deeper and slower, vibrating the air in visible ripples. Elias reached a hand toward the distortion, but the static burned his fingertips. He recoiled, staring as the light spiraled upward, forming a narrow column. Inside, the space twisted, refracting light like lit glass. "It's a rift," Mara whispered. "Not a crack, a doorway." The realization hit them both. This was not just gravity gone wrong. The cliff was splitting reality itself, showing them the heartbeat of another side of existence. The rift pulsed again, this time with sound, low, harmonic tones that resonated with the wind and sea. Mara activated an audio recorder, eyes narrowing as she watched the waveform fluctuate. "It's structured," she said. "Like language again?" Elias leaned closer, trying to listen beyond the noise. The tone rose in patterns: 3 beats, pause, 2 beats, repeating perfectly. Then he realized the rhythm matched the reversed Schumann resonance from before. The Earth's natural pulse, inverted, echoing back through the fracture. "It's the planet talking to itself," Elias murmured. Mara frowned. "Then what are we hearing? The echo or the original?" The rift's light flickered, dimming for a moment before surging brighter than ever. The wind shifted direction, pulling toward the fissure. Dust and pebbles rose in a spiraling column as the hum deepened into a single, impossible note. The force drew them closer until Elias had to anchor himself with a rope around a steel peg. The suction felt gravitational, yet reversed, as though the rift wanted to pull everything upward instead of down. Mara's shouts barely reached him through the howling wind. She scrambled to secure the remaining instruments, but each one lifted, hanging midair like trapped stars. Elias is destabilizing, she screamed. He squinted into the light, glimpsing flashes of something on the other side. Shadows that looked like themselves, but slightly delayed, mirroring every move half a second behind. The reflection mimicked even their panic. "It's copying us again," Mara yelled. Elias reached out despite the resistance, fingertips nearly touching the light. For an instant, his reflection smiled back, out of sync, knowing, before vanishing as the rift imploded with a burst of white light. When the light finally faded, the cliff was silent again. The rift had closed, leaving only smoking fractures where the ground had split. Mara collapsed, coughing, her palms scraped raw. Elias knelt beside her, helping her sit up. The instruments lay scattered, screens flickering weakly. He checked the gravimeter. Normal readings, at least on the surface. But the data feed showed something else, a steady frequency still pulsing from deep within the rock, matching the inverted Schumann tone. The rift hadn't vanished. It had gone underground. "It's moving," he whispered. Mara stared blankly at the horizon. "It's spreading." The air was heavy again, dense and humming. Above them, storm clouds formed a perfect circle, rotating silently. For the first time, Elias felt true fear. Not of what they'd discovered, but of what they might have awakened. Somewhere beneath their feet, the planet was answering back. The air grew unnaturally still. Not a sound from the sea, not even the whisper of wind. Elias felt pressure build in his ears. The strange quiet before something catastrophic. "Mara," he said softly. "Hold on to something." Before she could reply, the ground beneath them lurched. Every rock, grain of sand, and shard of metal began to rise, slow at first, then faster. Gravity wasn't pulling anymore. It was pushing. Elias's stomach turned as his boots lifted clear of the ground. He grasped for the nearest cable, floating weightless. "It's happening again!" Mara shouted, spinning slowly in the air as the equipment around her rotated like a constellation. The horizon tilted upward, ocean curving into the sky. Elias reached for her hand as they drifted apart, suspended in a silent storm of light. He felt neither fear nor pain, only awe. For the first time, he was free from the pull of the earth itself. As they drifted higher, the cliff below them fractured like glass. The instruments spun slowly in midair, orbiting them in perfect symmetry. Mara's voice trembled through the static of her headset. "Elias, we're not falling." He looked down, or up. Direction no longer mattered. The ocean was everywhere, folding into itself in spirals of reflected light. His mind raced through possibilities: atmospheric charge, magnetic inversion, cosmic interference. But deep down, he knew this wasn't physics. It was something older. "Look at the sea," Mara whispered. Waves froze in motion, suspended crests, shimmering like frozen crystal. Even the clouds held still. Elias exhaled, his breath forming a perfect sphere of vapor that hung before him. The world wasn't moving anymore. Time itself was holding its breath. Then the silence broke. A low vibration thrummed through Elias's chest. Not sound, but something deeper. His vision blurred as the light around them began to pulse, fading and returning in rhythmic intervals. "Mara, do you feel that?" he whispered. She nodded, hand over her heart. The pulses quickened, aligning with their heartbeats. Elias realized it wasn't random. The anomaly was synchronizing with them, adjusting. The weightlessness intensified until even their thoughts felt slower, as though stretched by unseen hands. Elias saw faint shapes forming in the air, overlapping shadows of himself, each moving a fraction of a second behind. Mara gasped. "We're being copied again?" The words echoed strangely, repeating from multiple directions. Elias stared into the floating haze. "No," he whispered. "We're the echoes this time." Light fractured around them like shards of a prism. The air crackled, alive with electric arcs that curved between the floating objects. Mara shielded her eyes as the gravimeter spun faster, its display flashing incomprehensible symbols. Elias felt the hum deepen again. But this time it wasn't external. It was inside him, vibrating through bone and blood. His fingertips glowed faintly blue, static flowing across his skin. "It's charging us," Mara whispered, her voice distant, dreamlike. A faint gravitational pull drew them upward, toward the heart of the light storm forming above. Elias stared into it, seeing what looked like a massive sphere, half light, half shadow, rotating slowly in the sky. "That's not the anomaly," he murmured. "That's the source." The sphere pulsed once, and the entire world flashed white. For one impossible moment, Elias saw the curvature of space itself bending, and then everything fell silent again. When their vision returned, they were floating high above the cliff. But the world below was wrong. The coastline curved inward, the sea folded upward like a mirrored dome. Time stuttered in flickering loops. Waves crashed backward. Raindrops fell up. Elias and Mara hung suspended in a perfect stillness at the center of it all. "We're inside the field," Mara said softly. Her voice echoed infinitely, fading into whispers of itself. Elias reached toward the gravimeter, drifting nearby. It showed no numbers, only a single continuous pulse, steady and alive. "This isn't gravity anymore," he murmured. "It's consciousness." As he spoke, the sphere above began to fade, leaving trails of light like veins across the sky. The pull returned suddenly, stronger than before. The floating debris dropped, racing downward. Elias grabbed Mara's hand as they began to fall, plunging back toward the cliff. The last thing he heard before the crash was the hum. Steady, eternal, whispering like a heartbeat that wasn't theirs. They landed hard against the fractured ground. The air knocked from their lungs. The instruments crashed beside them in a metallic clatter, then fell eerily silent. Elias groaned, rolling onto his back, staring at the sky. The glowing sphere was gone, replaced by drifting clouds moving impossibly slow. Mara sat up, clutching her tablet, its cracked screen still flickering. Symbols scrolled across the display. Not numbers, not text, but rhythmic patterns that pulsed in repeating sequences. "It's still transmitting," she whispered. Elias crawled beside her, his pulse pounding in his ears. The data was steady, deliberate, almost like a language written in frequency. "These aren't readings," Mara said, voice shaking. "They're messages." Elias froze, realization dawning. The field wasn't random. It was structured. The anomaly was trying to communicate, and they had just answered it. Hours passed, though time had lost all meaning. The air was colder now, the hum reduced to a low vibration barely audible beneath the wind. Mara connected the remaining instruments into a single data stream. Each pulse the anomaly sent formed a perfect mathematical pattern. The golden ratio, then Fibonacci sequences, then prime intervals. "It's intelligent," Elias whispered. "It knows our logic." Mara's eyes flicked to him, fear and fascination blending in her gaze. "Or it's learning from us," she replied. Every harmonic echoed through the stone, traveling miles underground. Elias adjusted a frequency filter, revealing faint sound beneath the main pulse, a whispering undertone. It wasn't static. It was voices, layered and reversed. "Listen," he murmured, turning the dial. Their own words played back to them from minutes before. The signal wasn't only talking, it was recording. Night descended slowly, painting the cliffs in deep blue and silver. Mara sat cross-legged, decoding the resonance data manually. She traced each waveform, mapping it against astronomical constants, orbital ratios, stellar frequencies. The patterns matched something cosmic. These aren't random signals, she said quietly. They mirror pulsar sequences. Elias leaned in, realization tightening his chest. You mean it's coming from space? Mara shook her head. Not coming, reflecting. It's like a gravitational echo. Elias stared toward the horizon, the dark sea glimmering faintly with trapped starlight. The thought chilled him. If the planet was echoing signals from the cosmos, then it was remembering them, storing them in its magnetic core like data in a hard drive. We're standing on a memory, he whispered. The hum trembled once more, soft and mournful, like the planet sighing in its sleep. The deeper they listened, the more human the resonance began to sound. Mara slowed the playback until each pulse stretched into clear tonal vibrations. Together, they formed patterns, 5 tones repeating, ascending, descending. It's structured communication, Elias breathed, like a call sign. Mara's eyes glistened. It's been here for centuries, maybe longer. This isn't new. We just tuned into it. The tablet screen flickered, translating sections of the waveform into visible light. A holographic map formed, showing energy lines crisscrossing the globe. Each pulse resonated with known fault lines, mountain ranges, deep-sea trenches. Elias pointed to one of the bright points. They're all connected. Every anomaly ever recorded. The realization felt vast, ancient. The Earth wasn't just reacting, it was networked. Every gravitational distortion was a node in its planetary memory. Dawn began to rise, pale light spilling across the shattered ridge. Mara stared at the tablet, exhaustion etched into her face. Elias, she whispered. I think I understand it. He turned toward her, eyes sunken from sleepless wonder. Understand what? She hesitated, as if afraid to speak it aloud. The signal? It's a heartbeat. The planet's pulse, but it's out of rhythm. Elias's breath caught. The inverted Schumann resonance, the reversed gravity. It was all the same event. The planet was trying to correct itself. If it's a heartbeat, he said, then it's alive. Mara nodded slowly, the horizon glowing behind her. And it's sick. The hum grew louder again, steady and strong, almost angry now. The cliff shuddered under their feet as waves below surged higher. Elias grabbed Mara's hand. If it's trying to heal, he said quietly. Then what happens when it succeeds? The cliff trembled as if exhaling after centuries of silence. The hum that had followed them since the beginning now rose in violent, uneven waves. Elias steadied the gravimeter, but its display flickered uselessly. Mara stumbled beside him, clutching her tablet as streaks of static leapt across the ground. It's destabilizing again, she shouted. The air shimmered like liquid heat, and the faint symbols carved into the rock flared bright one last time. A deep rumble echoed beneath their feet, followed by the terrible sound of cracking stone. The reading spiked upward, then fell to 0. The fields collapsing. Elias said, eyes wide. Mara grabbed his arm, her voice raw. If it goes under the sea, it could... Her words vanished in a sudden roar, as gravity returned in full force. Everything that had hovered, rocks, dust, tools, crashed down in a single deafening instant. When the tremor subsided, the world was still again. The hum had vanished completely, leaving behind an unnatural silence. The ocean below was flat, gleaming like glass. Mara sat on the ground trembling, her tablet cracked beyond repair. It's over, she whispered. Elias didn't answer. He was staring at the gravimeter. Now stable! Its screen pulsing softly with a single rhythmic wave. No, he murmured. It's still there. He crouched low, pressing his ear to the stone. The faintest vibration pulsed through it, steady and alive. Mara joined him, eyes wide with disbelief. "It's under us," she said softly. The realization settled between them. The anomaly hadn't been destroyed. It had gone deeper, retreating into the planet's core. The cliff, once fractured and glowing, now looked perfectly normal. Only the rhythm beneath betrayed the truth. They made camp near the ruined instruments, unable to leave, unwilling to move. The rhythmic pulse beneath the ground continued at perfect intervals. Every 7 seconds, a faint tremor, like a heartbeat echoing through stone. Mara worked silently, salvaging fragments of data from the few devices that still functioned. When the files loaded, she froze. Each recording showed the same waveform, a heartbeat that wasn't human. "It's communicating again," she said softly. Elias leaned closer. Between the peaks and troughs of the waveform, faint letters formed, embedded in the data itself. Together they read the word "remember." Elias stared at it, his breath shallow. "It's not just alive," he whispered. "It remembers everything." The pulse grew louder for a moment, almost as if acknowledging them, then faded once more into the earth's steady rhythm. Neither spoke. There was nothing left to measure, only to listen. By midday, the wind returned, gentle and real this time. The mist cleared, revealing the endless horizon stretching far beyond sight. Mara stood near the edge, eyes glistening with exhaustion. "If this thing is alive," she said quietly, "maybe it's not trying to destroy us. Maybe it's trying to warn us." Elias joined her, staring out across the motionless sea. The idea lingered in the air, that the planet wasn't merely reacting to physics, but reaching out in distress. "Every anomaly we've ever found," he said, "could be a cry for help." The waves began to move again, slowly, cautiously, as though testing the limits of gravity. The hum beneath them softened, steady as a resting pulse. For the first time, it sounded peaceful, almost content. That night, under a sky alive with stars, Elias sat alone beside the gravimeter. Its light softly in rhythm with the pulse beneath the earth. He turned on the recorder, his voice calm but heavy. "This is Dr. Elias Rowan. Day 6. Gravity has stabilized. The anomaly has gone quiet, but the frequency remains." He hesitated, watching the horizon flicker with faint lightning far out at sea. "It isn't gone. It's asleep. And when it wakes again, someone else will find it." The wind carried his words out into the dark. He shut off the recorder and looked down at the gravimeter's steady wave. Each pulse was measured deliberate, like breathing. "We measure gravity," he whispered to the night. "We met it." Behind him, the cliff glowed faintly one last time, then went still. The earth kept its secret, humming softly beneath their feet. Alive, remembering, waiting.